Welcome, readers. Today I am going to speak about an autobiography. Honestly speaking, I am not particularly fond of autobiographies. This is because the author of an autobiography primarily engages in self praise. They also tend to justify their mistakes with various arguments or conveniently shift the blame onto their contemporaries. Consequently, one cannot be certain of finding truth within these accounts. Most autobiographies are one sided. However, I recently read one that stood out. It's the autobiography of Lt.Gen. General J.F.R. Jacob, a prominent official in the Indian Army. While I won't claim it's entirely devoid of self praise, the book is certainly worth reading. The name of the book is An Odyssey in War and Peace. As the book's title suggests, Lieutenant General Jacob's life journey was undoubtedly adventurous. He was an active witness to the formative years of the Indian Army. The book comprehensively details the responsibilities he held throughout his career, the superiors he served under, the nature of their conduct, his role in the 1971 war, internal disputes in Indian Army, the relationship between the military and politicians, and his experience as a governor. Since this book contains a lot of information and full of happenings, I'll be dividing this review into two parts. In part 1, we will talk about Lieutenant General Jacob's life before 97 war, and in part 2, we will talk about 1971 war and post 1971 events about Lieutenant General Jacob's life. So let's begin today's review with part 1. So, Lieutenant General Jacob was Jewish by birth. He was born into a prosperous Jewish family in Calcutta. After completing his college education, he joined the British Army in 1941. He served in the military for 37 years, from 1941 to 1978. So it's really a long period. Following his military career, he also served as the governor of Goa and Punjab. This combination of military and administrative experience gives a unique dimension to his autobiography. The book begins with the preface in which Lieutenant General Jacob provides a brief overview of his military and administrative career and mentions some important events in his life. He actively participated in 1971 war and has written another book based on his experience in that war. The book is titled Surrender at Dhaka, Birth of a Nation. He mentioned with regret that he had given copies of the book to Field Marshal Manek Shah and Lieutenant General Jagjit Arora, who also participated in that war, but received no response from them. The preface also informs us that the book has been translated into various foreign languages. The author briefly discusses why India won the 1971 war, what India's war strategy was, and which factors play a crucial role in winning a war. At the end of the preface, Lieutenant General Jacob briefly analyzes the current global situation and India's international and internal challenges. He also offers some suggestions on how to address these problems. Now, this book was written in year 2011 and published by Rowley Publication. So, uh, it would be interesting to examine what steps the current government, which came in power in 2014, and now almost 10 years this government is in power, had taken in the current situation and whether any of the suggestions have been implemented. So I leave it to you. You can just look after those suggestions and then you can compare that whatever the things has been done in last 10 years. In the first six chapters, Lieutenant General Jacob recounts how his family migrated from Syria to India and settled there. His childhood in Calcutta, a captivating description of old Calcutta, his college education, what motivated him to join the army, how he enlisted, the battlefields where he served during World War II, how the army was partitioned along with the country after the war. I am talking about India Pakistan partition. His artillery training in England after the war, the various responsibilities he had in military, and finally his trip to United States for again artillery training. A particularly interesting anecdote describes an instance of indiscipline on the author's part during his training in England and how his superior responded. Reading about this incident, how the author handled a similar instance of indiscipline among his subordinates when he was a senior officer in the artillery division enhances our respect for him. An inspiring story tells of a British officer who guided the author regarding the division of assets between India and Pakistan in Deolali. This officer had lost a leg in his war but still regularly played tennis with an artificial limb. So, this is something really interesting. Don't you think so? At that time, there was a large Anglo-Indian community in Igatpuri. The author and his colleagues regularly attended dance parties there on Saturday nights. Okay, so what to do in leisure time? So this is the way out, which author and his colleagues had found out. So they used to travel from Nashik or Deolali, you can say, to Igatpuri on every Saturday night. So these are some small but interesting things to read in this book. When the British left India, there were no facilities for training military officers in India. The only training facility in all of India was in Quetta. And then after partition, Quetta became part of Pakistan. Therefore, after India's independence, the then government decided to establish a training center for officers in Wellington in the Nilgiri Hills. This center was initially headed by Major General Joe Lt.Gen, who was the veteran from the Second World War. And along with this, there are many British officers who were working in the Indian Army. So this illustrates that even after India's independence, many British officers continued to serve in various positions in the Indian Army. So this is something surprising, but yes, this is the fact. The author further describes his work at the Wellington Training Center. After his time at the training center, the author was assigned to the 75 Patiala Mountain Battery. This unit had experienced some problems and soldiers in the unit had shot one of their junior officers. So that particular group of soldiers was considered to be a notorious group. Really. How the author handled his responsibility is worth reading in detail. So here we learn certain lessons of people management as well. The author provides informative details about the composition and responsibilities of a mountain artillery unit. That is how many persons or people are there in one unit. Okay, what are their responsibilities? Okay, how they have been divided. Okay, so and so forth. That is interesting to read. The author then writes about his time in Jhansi, the hunts he went on, his promotions, his superiors, etc. That time, hunting was not banned in India. He also describes his interaction with Major General B.M. Kaul, popularly known as B.G. Kaul, who was considered as a culprit of 1962 war, and Defense Minister Krishna Menon, who were considered responsible for the defeat in 1962 war with China, and what they expected of him. In 1958, a Chinese military delegation visited India. During his interaction with this delegation, one of the delegates referred to how the Indian soldiers in the British Army looted the Chinese Emperor's palace during the Second Opium War. Now, regarding Opium War, okay, you can find the information on Google that British had fought 3 wars with China. Okay, and those wars are considered as the Opium War. The author was surprised by this, as it was time of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. The author reported this incident to his superior, General Kaul, but he dismissed it, suggesting that the author had misunderstood the things. According to the author, China was showing its hostility through various signals, but unfortunately, our political and military leadership at that time ignored those signals. The author illustrates through numerous examples how the Indian political leadership misused the army. This include this included tasks such as providing horses and personnel for the film Mughal-e-Azam. You will be surprised to hear this, but then that was the truth. And ensuring the smooth water supply of Delhi. So this was the responsibility given to author, okay, by B.G. Kaul, okay, when he was posted in Delhi. Major General Kaul used soldiers to build houses for soldiers, a practice that was disapproved of by then General Sam Manekshaw and other officers like the author. However, General Kaul used his political influence to continue this practice. This incident is mentioned in General Kaul's book as well, though he justified it. The recently released film Sam Bahadur also references this incident in the context of Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw's inquiry. At that time, India was completely dependent on foreign countries for weapons. The then Defense Minister Krishna Menon harbored resentment towards the United States. So he used to hate United States, which prevented the Indian Army from acquiring high quality weapons. In this regard, the author cites the example of the 5.56 mm rifle and the Avro 748 aircraft. So all that incidents is very interesting to read. According to the author, Krishna Menon's tenure as a defense minister was detrimental to the Indian Army. It was a disaster according to author. He also created much confusion in the transfers of military officers. The then Chief of Army Staff, General Thimayya, opposed all of this and even resigned. It is saddening and infuriating to read how Nehru treated General Thimaiya. The author holds Krishna Menon and General B.M. Kaul fully responsible for the 1962 defeat. Author also had the opportunity to work with Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw. In the book, Lieutenant General Jacob, means author, provides an objective analysis of Field Marshal Sam's strengths and weaknesses based on his behavior in various situations, which is worth reading. Lieutenant General Jacob emphasizes that Sam Manekshaw always ensured that the army and its soldiers were treated with respect. This is also highlighted in the recent movie about Sam Manekshaw. Unfortunately, Lieutenant General Jacob also describes in the book how a rift developed between him and Field Marshal Manekshaw due to the book he wrote about the 1971 war. The book also explains which statements by Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw angered Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and its consequences. The book also mentions how the government treated General Thimaiya unfairly. Author's experience during his tenure in Deolali and Ladakh are also worth reading. From Deolali, he was posted to Samba. An anecdote about the perilous situation he and his superiors faced during a border inspection and how his superiors behaved in that situation is particularly compelling. This incident teaches us a great deal about the leadership qualities. It is an excellent lesson on what a leader should and should not be. His experience in handling riots in Jammu with the help of local assistant commissioner is also worth reading. The author also describes how he implemented a war strategy of using secondary roads instead of established routes for army movement during his time in Rajasthan and how this proved useful to him later. During this period, Lieutenant General Jacob also created a training manual for desert warfare, and that manual is still in use. Later, Lieutenant General Jacob was appointed as the Eastern Command Army Chief. Field Marshal Manekshaw was appointed as the Chief of the Indian Army at the same time. While working in the Eastern Command, author carried out many responsibilities. He also visited Russia with Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw. That time, Sam Manekshaw was a general. His various experiences in Russia are very interesting to read. For example, the then Russian general Marshal Grechko stated in meeting about China that China is not a trustworthy country. Now here, very important thing to be noted is that during that time, China and Russia were in good terms with each other. In fact, in the beginning, means when China was emerging, Russia helped China a lot. Both of them were communist countries. Only thing is that their way of implementing communism was different, that's it. But still then, Russia was not at all sure about China, and according to me, today also the same situation is there. Also, another interesting thing which author is sharing with us about his Russia trip is that the Indian military officers who went to Russia were not allowed to go anywhere alone. So they had been already always escorted by some Russian officer. Means here author had shared his own experience in that regard. Then author also describes the role played by the army suppressing the Naxalite movement in Bengal and conducting the state assembly elections peacefully. So here we are ending the first part. In second part, as I said earlier, we will cover 1971 war and then the post 1971 period. So till then, wait, and for now, goodbye, stay safe, keep reading. Thanks a lot.